What's up, everyone? So today I want to continue on with a video on my Anatomy of a Strength Coach series. So this again is sort of my opportunity to take you guys behind the scenes of what I do at the Strength Cave, what I do as a online coach, as a strength coach, as a nutrition coach. This is the series. I wanted to call it Anatomy of a Strength Coach because I'm going to be walking you through the anatomy of what I do and sort of the behind the scenes of what I do. So today what I have for you guys is basically a case study that I want to walk you guys through. So what I thought of doing is basically taking a client of mine and walking you through what I did with them as far as their program goes, what kinds of things that I looked out for when I sign them up. What are the factors that I consider in making their program? What are the most important things that I consider when it comes to their success as one of my clients? And then also just give you a look at what their program looks like, and explain why I included certain things in their program and maybe why I didn't include others. So I'm going to walk you through one of my clients today. Layne Norton is the client today. And so let's go ahead and get to that. I'll do another screen capture here for you guys.
Okay guys, so today I'm going to walk you through the anatomy of my client's training program. Some of you may know him. His name is Layne Norton. He's an influential figure in the fitness industry these days. He's the owner of BioLane, and he has made his name as a nutrition coach. And now he is an author, a fitness influencer, still does some coaching, but is now kind of more focused on helping others to be better coaches and building his own team of online coaches. Layne came to me a couple of years ago wanting to get back to sort of where he was before as far as being a competitor in powerlifting. He was 2015 runner-up in the 2015 IPF Worlds. He's a two-time national champion in the USAPL, and basically wanted to get back to that. At that point in his life, he was having a lot of stress outside in his life, not necessarily in the gym, but his life was pretty hectic. Things weren't going in his way all the time. These days, you wouldn't ever know. He's made the best of that situation, but he's been pretty open and honest about the things that are happening in his life, so you could probably find that on his Instagram or YouTube or other social media. He right now, let me walk you through some of his stats. Right now, he's 37 years old. Training age, close to 20 years of training in his past. His occupation as an online coach, business owner, like I had mentioned. Lifestyle factors. He has two young children. He has a hectic schedule. He travels very frequently, and he's a public figure, which sort of exposes him to a lot of stress and a lot of, um, you know, ridicule at times, and also criticism. And so, training history, like I mentioned, he was a national, international powerlifting competitor, formerly active professional bodybuilder, extensive history of training at this point, compound lifting, powerlifting, um, injury history. He's pretty well documented that he's gone through multiple low back injuries. He has disc herniations in his lumbar spine, disc herniations in his cervical spine. So that has caused multiple neck and lower back flare-ups where he would basically be unable to move correctly, so sometimes unable to get up off the floor. And he worked with Dr. Stu McGill to kind of correct some of his movement imbalances and to help him to get to a place where he doesn't have those flare-ups. And thankfully, he is at a place now where he doesn't get flare-ups. But he still has intermittent back pain, intermittent discomfort, depending on what's going on in his life. He has a torn pec in his past that doesn't really give him much of a problem anymore, and has also dealt with some strains in his hip and groin area that he sustained during his powerlifting career. So all that has to be accounted for. His goals when he came to me, like I said, get back to national level in terms of his USAPL powerlifting events. He wanted to compete at nationals, possibly get back to the IPF world stage, and eventually later down the road, everybody asks him about it. I don't know when he wants to go back, but eventually he probably does want to get back into bodybuilding. So what does that mean? It's going to mean that his training is going to be pretty geared towards powerlifting, but that we also have to keep a little bit of accessory work in there to keep his muscles from atrophying. Especially in the muscles that don't get worked very much in powerlifting. What are his needs? This is where I kind of outline what I think he needs. Well, he definitely needs to stay injury free. I can't prevent injury. There's nothing you can do to completely prevent injury, but there are things we can do to sort of make you a little bit more anti fragile, make you a little bit more resilient, and hopefully keep you out of injuries as often. Lifting schedule needs to accommodate his business and his family. He's got the two young kids. He's got the newly married, so he's got a wife. He's got to have time to make decisions as a boss, run his business, make videos, write books, things like that. He travels a lot, so we have to accommodate for that. And because of that hectic lifestyle, because of the propensity to be exposed to high stress situations, he needs a lower volume. He needs careful planning of intensity. He needs to know that slow and steady wins the race when it comes to his training. Biomechanical changes, he's pretty well known for having a very, very bent over squat. Some people call it a good morning. I wanted to decrease that forward lean in order to get him to take some emphasis off of his lower back when he squats. He's squatting upwards of high 600s. That's not going to feel too good on your back if you're always having to put all of that on your lower back. So we wanted to decrease the forward lean a bit. The way we were going to do that is to increase his ankle dorsiflexion and his foot stability. That would help him to cut and also cut a little bit of the depth in the squat. There was times where he's going a little too deep, and improve glute engagement and strength, as well as on the upper body side, improve scapular control. So let me give you an example of what I mean when talking about his depth. This is from 2015 when he set the world record in the squat. Look how deep he gets down at the bottom there. That's kind of unnecessary for the sport. We only need him to get down to a certain point, and anything after that, you're not getting any extra credit points for that. So we wanted to cut that, like I mentioned here. I'm going to watch what happens when he comes out of the squat. Look what happens to his knees a little bit. So they dive in a little bit. He gets almost stripper squat, as they call it, where his hips rise a little bit faster. All of that is going to put some undue stress on the low back, so we didn't want to do that any more than we needed to. So looking at his training plan, you'll notice here that his volume is definitely not as much as he had done in the past. I'm giving him 2 sets of safety bar squats and then moving him to something like a belt squat, where that's taking the emphasis off of his lower back. We've got things, banded kneeling hip thrusts that moved on to barbell glute bridges. So I'm really trying to get that glute engagement and strength to increase, so that way at the top of the squat he's able to use his glutes, or in the middle of the squat use his glutes better, as opposed to relying on his lower back and relying on his back in general, which is very strong, by the way, but that's also causing him more grief as far as low back pain and things like that. On the upper body side of things, I have him doing things like bench press on one day, but then a towel bench press or a block bench press or a spoto press. The reason I'm doing that is to cut the range of motion a bit, to make it a little bit less intense because of those neck injuries, and just stress in general. Um, Deadlifts are less frequent. We're having him at this point. We were having him do only deadlifts once per week. Again, that's because we need to account for stress in his life. And when the off season, especially, we don't need to be crushing him with deadlifts all the time, because that's something that he responds to pretty well. Some other things that I did to improve that scapular control is I had him doing a lot of landmine shoulder stuff, and exercises where I could get him to unlock his scapula and actually move around We do in powerlifting, in bench pressing, you're always sort of locking your scapula into the bench and locking them into place. I wanted to make sure that he could move that scapula around so that way we could prevent or help to prevent more cervical discomfort and pain. Um, Other than that, we did a lot of accessory work to help him build up his squats, to help him build up his deadlift, to help him build up his bench press, and at the same time, we had to give him some exercises to keep him healthy. So you'll notice here, in his warm ups, I have him doing, a deep lunge with reach. We have him doing glute bridges again to keep those glutes engaged. We have him doing lateral walks again for the glutes. And then this one here is a really good core exercise that I like for engaging the core, but in a pattern where you're going to be sort of mimicking what you're doing in the bottom of a squat or the bottom of a deadlift. So you're kind of better, you're already kind of engaging that movement pattern and that neuromuscular pattern before you get into the heavy lifting with a barbell. Um, yeah, you'll notice here things like landmine twists and things to keep his core activated. Um, uh, I had him doing a lot of stuff that is not necessarily powerlifting or powerlifting focused, but getting him to move in different planes of motion in order to um, bulletproof his core and bulletproof his movement. Because the last thing you want is to be in the bottom of a 600 and some odd pound squat and have just a little weird movement laterally and not be able to compensate for that. So we're doing a lot, to get him ready for the unknown or for the unpredictable, I guess you could say. Other than that, you'll notice we kept some, you know, beach muscle stuff in there, some arms, some pull-ups, things to keep his muscles from atrophying, as far as the muscles that don't get used a lot in powerlifting. So the arms, the calves, the shoulders to some extent, as far as like lateral and rear delts are concerned, and lats get used to keep you in place and to keep your core stabilized, but they don't necessarily get used in a hypertrophy type setting when you're doing powerlifting. So um, you'll this has all been sort of planned out ahead of time. You'll notice here that I plan out everything ahead of time as far as what they're going to be doing. So to give you an example of what Layne's going to be doing here over the next few weeks. So right now it's in the beginning of August. So we're building intensity. We're going to get him to a point where he can maintain that intensity, intensify over time. He's going to be traveling to Italy. Again, we got to compensate for that. So we have to deload at that point because he's going to be traveling overseas on a plane for a long time sitting. The last thing we need to do is load him up and expose him to greater risk of injury, especially with the jet lag and the issues with sleep that might come with that. And then from there, we're going to start peaking him, getting him really ready for his return to nationals later on this year. So this is just an example of one guy's program. You're going to notice that his volume is much different than the volume that you would see maybe out of a younger man who is lower in training age, that doesn't have the kind of injuries or the lifestyle that Layne has. And I'm going to show you guys an example of that at some point in one of these videos, but I wanted to start out just showing you guys that you don't have to hammer people with volume and intensity. You don't have to crush them every day in the gym in order to get them results. Right now, Layne is almost as strong as he has ever been, and it was a slow build. He started literally with the barbell at one point because of the back pain that he had. And there were times where we had conversations where he was pretty, disheartened by where he was at and kind of feeling that his progress was slow and he wanted to be back where he was. And people were on Instagram telling him that he's washed up and that he's not going to get back to being strong like he was before. But we stuck with the plan. He trusted the process. That's the hashtag that I have all my clients use, which is hashtag trust the process. Um, Now he's enjoying being as strong as he would like to be again, not having pain like he was before from all of that, enjoying life as a father, as a business owner. His business is thriving. That's the other thing you have to keep in mind is an injury is going to not just keep him out of the gym, but it's going to keep him from being a dad. It's going to keep him from um, excelling in his business. All of that needs to be taken into account. You can't just be given a training program to somebody because you think it's cool and you're crushing them every day, but then it's starting to impact their daily life with things like injuries or just not feeling good or not having energy. So I think that Layne would agree that we've gotten him to a point where he's got the energy to do all the things that he needs to do in life, and still train hard. Yeah, there's going to be a point where we're going to crush his soul a little bit going into nationals because that's kind of what's needed as a powerlifting competitor. But there's a time and place for that. You don't need to do it every day. So you know, basically, take home from this, you got to take all of this stuff into account. This is a really good example of that. You can get away with just sort of throw in whatever you want out there to somebody when they are younger or don't have this kind of life stress, but especially as somebody starts to enter the workforce or starts to have kids or, whatever the case may be, those things are going to creep. Everything on this side here is going to creep into what's going on over here. So, um, you know, keep that in mind. That's why I always do an assessment with each one of my clients, and that's why I keep all of this stuff very, very close in the forefront of my brain when I'm programming training programs for people. So this is just episode one of my Anatomy of a Strength Coach series. Like I said today, I wanted to go over Layne's program for some very important reasons. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys want to see. Maybe what kind of avatar you want me to explain next. I'm welcome. I'm very open to those suggestions. Do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube. Follow me on Instagram, like you probably already are, depending on where you're seeing this. And just comment on what you think you want to see and what you think I could do to maybe even improve on what I showed you here today. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I hope you guys are having a great time out there in the gym.